All right, so the last you saw, I took the transmission off, drained the oil, got this mounted on the stand. Now the plan is to get this basically bare bones. You gotta take the intake off, power steering pump off, thermostat housing, coolant housing in the back here as well. So got a little bit to do. Might as well start. All right, so you saw in the video, I just pulled off the power steering pump, deleted the bracket, took off some of the thermostat housing, bajazz, this brace. What else? Some few other minor things. I see a lot of things I can delete, like for example, this coolant line going into this sandwich plate and then going up to the IAC, which I'm still not sure if I'm going to run the IAC or not. We'll have to see based on research what people think. But yeah, once I get this intake off, we'll take a look at the valves and see what's going on in there. A little bit of movie magic here. So my engine's got about 116,000 miles on it. All right, well, it looks like the valves are in pretty good shape. What I'm looking for is any carbon buildup around the valve seats, which I'm just not seeing, so. All right, just picked up a new impact. Let's see if we can get this bolt out without propping the crankshaft somehow. That's the right tool. We got the engine torn down on the top end, took the timing belt off, and got this pulley nice and loose. So what we're gonna do now is get this oil pan off tonight, and that'll allow me to get access to the oil pump on the front, and then I'll be able to get the new boundary oil pump installed. I know this looks ridiculous using a 1/2 inch to take these off, but my 1/4 inch impact is still broken, so that's what we're doing. Don't judge. I do this stuff on the side, and not every day. Wish I could, but can't. So I kind of did some work off camera here. I did the oil pump. I got that on there. You guys saw that in the video, but ever since then, I went ahead and put the pan back on, which I found out the source of my leak was actually this gasket right here. I guess when I put this on underneath the vehicle, I didn't do it right. So that notch has to line up there. That notch is essential. That kind of lines that gasket up. It helped me by putting that gasket in this galley first and then cinching the pan up there. So if you're doing this underneath the car, start there. Don't put your gasket on the pan and then try to lift the pan up. That just opens yourself up for failure, like it happened for me. So cleaned everything up after getting that pan on. I got the Super Miata kit in. I was checking some fitment here. What I'm doing is I'm rerouting my coolant for the turbo on top of the coolant reroute. So instead of, I think it's gonna be a lot cleaner if I delete that factory housing. So I got that block off plate, takes this filler neck or housing out the equation. So now I don't have to run from my turbo line off that housing to the inside of the turbo, then back to the spigot here, or the housing down here. So with that said, I got some AN to compression fittings, and this is a 5/16 inch tube. I was able to use a compression fitting on that side, saw off the little flared end. I just chopped that off and then slid that over it, tightened it down, and it works pretty well. So got an AN fitting there now. And in the back here, right off the factory water bolt or port, I put a M12 by 1.5, I believe it was. I'll double check that. I'll correct it in the video if it's wrong. M12 by 1.5 thread adapter to AN6, a 6 AN fitting. And then I put a 90, and then again, one of those compression fittings. So what I'll do with that is I'll run 5/16 inch hardline to the turbo. So I got 6 AN fittings coming off the turbo as well. And this 5/16 inch stainless pipe will run right to the turbo. From here on out, all my builds are gonna have hard lines if I can, because dealing with the soft rubber lines with the stainless flex material around it, it just doesn't cut it for me. So with that said, I also did the housing for the rear of the Super Miata coolant reroute kit. This is the Q-Max system. So the tube will run out the back around the intake towards the front where the radiator inlet is. So that will route that there, and then off the bottom of the radiator goes back to the factory housing down here. I cut my valve cover because I think it's a cool look versus just having that, you know, with the cam gears exposed. I think that would look kind of neat. What I'm going to do today is get the timing belt assembly back on and cam bolts and cam gears on, and then put the timing belt back on, timing covers, pulley, crank pulley, and all that good stuff. you're timing your motor, the things you want to look out for, if you look on the back plate here, there's an I that indicates that it has to line up with this line here, and an E that indicates that it has to line up with this line here. And there's two letters on each of the cam gears. I here, E here. Obviously match it up to those lines. So try to get it matched up as best you can. You know, sometimes you're not going to get it perfect, but as long as it's, you know, close enough, we can go ahead and get it on there and then count the amount of teeth that are in between the top notch and the top notch over here. So that's usually how I've done it. I've never had a problem doing it that way. And, you know, all your stuff has to match up. So there's a notch on the oil pan, or that oil pump, get that timing belt on there. And then you can put it on your idler belt pulley here, kind of get it as tight as it can go. Now that I got it decently on there, let's try to slip this on over, just like that. And then we can check the teeth. If they're on there, there's a little bit of slack on the top. Let's count how many is in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So now we have 19 teeth between this notch and that notch, and a little bit of slack on the top. Everything else is taut. Now we're perfectly timed. That's lined up there, I's lined up here, E's lined up here, 19 teeth in between. So good to go. It's as easy as that. So now we want to come back through and just torque all of these. Torque specs on these guys: 35 foot-pounds for the idler and the tensioner. So 35 foot-pounds for the idler and the tensioner, and then 42 foot-pounds for the cam gears. All right, we know that one's torqued. Okay, and we're gonna go ahead and drop this down to 35. All right, so now that we got the timing covers on, you can see I got the water belt pulley on, Loctited all those bolts there. Did not Loctite the cover bolts because it's not a moving part. Put some Loctite on there, give it 1 to 2 Ugga Duggas just for now until I can get this back in the car, and put the transmission, you know, into 5th gear and really torque that down to 120 foot-pounds per spec. I think the next thing to do is to pull this back off the engine stand and get it ready for mounting the rear main seal, and then mount the transmission up after I get the clutch on. So rear main seal, clutch, and then put the transmission back on. You know what? I lied. I'm gonna put the motor mount brackets on. Cool. That's it. All right, there she is. So we got that motor sitting in there nice and square. Finally got those motor mounts lined up. Thought that was gonna be an easier process than it was, but we still got through it, no big deal. Couple of things that I wanna do to this while it's in this state and while I'm still waiting on my Skunk 2 intake to come in. It's been about a month on back order. I should be getting notification of that shipping out pretty soon. But as you can see, you know, a lot of things are deleted, like thermostat housing. There's some extraneous bracketry that I deleted. What else? The top of the valve cover, I'm working on getting somebody to powder coat that for me. So that'll look a little bit better once it's done. I deleted the coolant lines going to the turbo. I'm gonna do a hard line setup there. Since I deleted that thermostat housing, it had a barb connection or fitting on there. I realized after the fact that shit, I need to do something about the coolant feed now that I'm deleting that. It looks so much better without it, so I figured this is worth it. We'll do a hard line coolant feed to the turbo, so that'll also look a lot better once it's done. Yeah, the few things that I have left to get this thing up and running is like A, definitely get the intake in place. B, you gotta slap the manifold back on there. I gotta do some funky stuff with the downpipe and the atmosphere dump for the wastegate because it's really tight in there. I built it the best I could at the time I did it, and it's still, you know, it moves around in there and it hits all sorts of different things. So I kind of want to take a hammer and kind of massage this a little bit more and try to get that to look a little bit better. Probably should have done that with the motor out, but it is what it is, and I can still get a hammer in there, so no big deal. But yeah, excited. Got the steering rack, power steering deleted. It's just a manual rack now. That's another great thing. I want to do something with the oil cooler, the factory oil cooler. So that's another thing I want to work on. I want to get a thermostatic oil cooler housing, and what it'll do is it'll replace that factory unit there, which coolant would just run through there and cool the oil going to the filter. And thermostatic housing will allow me to put some AN fittings in there, and then I can run AN to, you know, PTFE line, and then run it out to the front. And I might be doing some junkyard runs to try to find a factory oil cooler or transmission cooler off of a pickup truck or something like that. I might try to incorporate that into this build. Oh yeah, I also have a couple of things to do electronics wise for the ECU or ECM, and that is one, I got a flex fuel sensor, so I'll be running a flex fuel sensor for this thing that'll allow me to run E85, and then I also got a electronic boost controller. Sorry I didn't get every little detail, but this is more about the process and the build and how it's coming along. So I'm pretty excited to bring you guys along with the ride, and we'll see where this thing takes me. Ultimately, I'd like to see this power target to be at like around 300, 350 horsepower. But for right now, I think I said this in the previous video, I'm just trying to keep it kind of reliable for right now. I don't really have the real estate. I'm living in an apartment, and this is an apartment garage, so I'm trying to also save for a house, and that is coming first. This is kind of like a little side project until I can get into a house, and then from there I can really do some big stuff. So that'll be later down the road. We'll build this motor up a little bit. For right now, I want to get it to the roadmap of 10 PSI. Once I get it to 10 PSI and it's running stably and I'm on E85 and all that stuff, then we can look at popping this motor out and getting it freshened up. So that'll be the next roadmap for this thing. But for right now, like I said, just get it nice and square, and then we'll run it. So thanks for watching, you guys. This is an exciting build for me. I've had this Miata for about 4 to 5 years now. Actually 5 years, which is crazy to think about, but yeah, it's a cool little car. Always love these. I think they're really capable, and you know, obviously a lot of fun to drive. Else I wouldn't own one. So, all right, guys. As always, take it easy and don't work too hard, and do the things you love. See ya.